In this video, I'm going to share with you exactly how I quit my 9-to-5 corporate job. This is not a video about how to give 2 weeks notice or to leave on good terms. This is a video where I will share with you the exact steps that I took to quit my job. It's going to cover things like getting my finances in order and finding my purpose and passion in life, and the things that I did in the 2+ years leading up to quitting my job. So in this video, I'm going to cover the 7 phases that I went through to go from unhappy corporate employee to starting my own business. I'm going to cover exactly what I did in each phase and how to avoid the mistakes that I made. Hey everyone, I'm Alex. I'm a former 9-to-5er turned life coach, and I'm here to help you get on your path to purpose and leave your 9-to-5. So we have a lot to get through in this video, and for that reason, I'm not going to cover why I wanted to quit my 9-to-5, but if you're curious, you can check out this video up here, and I talk about a lot of the reasons why I wanted to leave my job. So in this video, I'm covering the steps that I took to leave my 9-to-5. They're specific to my own experience, but I do believe that they are general enough that they could be applied to anyone working a corporate 9-to-5 type job. And I do talk about how I got my finances in order in this video and what I did to financially be ready to quit my job. But this is not to be taken as financial advice. I am not a financial advisor, and I'm just someone on the internet sharing their own experience. I'm sharing for information purposes only, and it's up to you to evaluate the merits and risks of listening to what I say. So with those little disclaimers aside, let's get started. Phase 1 is the contemplation phase. In this phase, you're starting to think about what else you could be doing. Maybe you're bored at work, maybe you're just unhappy, but you start to think about other options. This is when you really start waking up to the fact that maybe you don't want to stay at this career or this job any longer. This could look like maybe exploring what other job opportunities are available, maybe you start looking at grad school, or maybe you start contemplating a complete career change. This phase for me looked like being a little bit bored at work when things were slow, starting to feel unhappy in the work that I was doing, and I started thinking about grad school. This is often the easiest thing to think about if you've already gone through the university or college system, and it's a natural path that a lot of people take. A lot of people will use a master's program to pivot or further their career. And I was definitely here for a little while where I was thinking about first getting a master's in engineering to pivot my career into another area. And then I was thinking about getting a master's in a completely different program to completely shift my career into a different path. I had been looking at possibly getting a master's in planning, and I also explored a master's in architecture. When I started thinking about the 3 or 4 years that I would take to pivot my career into these areas, I realized that I didn't have it in me to go back to school again. And that, combined with being laid off shortly before I started contemplating these ideas, really made me think that I wanted to start my own business, become an entrepreneur, and really start to live life on my own terms. Phase 2 is the decision phase. So it's definitely easy to start exploring ideas and daydreaming if you're having a bad day at work or someone just really annoyed you, but you really have to make the decision and commit yourself to making this change to move forward into the other phases. And the decision phase is so important because it really is where you commit yourself to making change in your life. And it's where you tell yourself that I'm going to figure out this next step no matter what it takes, and I will eventually be leaving this job. And once you've made a decision, the next part of this phase is coming up with a plan. And this plan at this stage is going to look like committing yourself to quitting within a certain timeline. I actually didn't do this until quite a ways into my journey of quitting. And I believe if I had done this, I may have been able to quit my job a lot sooner than I did, and I wouldn't have dragged my feet for so long. And the 2 things that I did to come up with my plan and have a rough idea of a time frame for which I could quit my job are doing a little bit of a risk assessment of my own risk tolerance and also doing a financial assessment of my finances and when I could possibly be financially ready to quit. So when it comes to doing a risk assessment, you really have to think about your own unique situation, but here's a few things that come to mind for my situation. And so the first thing is, what is your support system? Do you have supportive family that you could possibly fall back on if needed? Do you have a partner that could financially support you in some way during this time? So start thinking of a backup plan for all the scenarios that could go wrong when it comes to quitting your job. And start looking at your finances. Do you have debt? How much savings do you have? How well developed do you want your next business to be as a side hustle before you will feel comfortable enough to quit your job? And so the reason that this first step is called a risk assessment is because each of us is going to have our own unique risk tolerance when it comes to, for example, how much debt we feel comfortable having taking a leap into a new career, and how much savings we feel comfortable having before we're ready to quit our job. For me, I wanted to have a 6-month runway saved up before I would feel ready to quit my job. So those are some examples of things that you can consider in your risk tolerance assessment and really get a sense of where you need things to be before you'll be ready to quit your job. And so once you've completed that, you'll have a sense of where things need to be financially, and you can start to do your financial assessment. And so for me, this was looking at my debt. I had outstanding car payments still, and I also had a student loan that was needing to be paid off. And like I said before, I also wanted to save up a 6-month runway. So for me, financially, before I would be ready to quit my job with my own level of risk tolerance, I wanted to pay off all my debt and I wanted to save up a 6-month runway. And so based on my current paychecks and how much extra money I had every month to put towards these things, I could start to get a sense of a timeline for when my debt would be paid off and my runway would be saved up. And that's the timeline that you can start working towards. And of course, this is just a rough timeline. This is probably going to evolve, especially if you start a business and your side hustle and you start making income. This could really expedite your timeline down the road. Hey everyone, as you can tell, this is not the same lighting as before. This is kind of my editing Alex version that I'm sneaking in here. And I really just wanted to add this in so that you had the full picture of exactly how I quit my job. And the one thing that I forgot to talk about earlier is that I had started my side hustles and I had those going, but I did not have a business or a side hustle that fully replaced my 9-to-5 income. And I was okay with that, and I decided to leave my job before that had happened because I felt really drained and just creatively not there going to my job every day. And so for me, it felt like the right step to just take that leap, leave my 9-to-5, kind of have that time to decompress and the space away from my job. And from there, I was able to really get clarity and put all the pieces together and go full in on my coaching and starting YouTube. And so this is definitely a path that you can take if it fits into kind of your risk assessment that we talked about earlier. For me, I knew that my level of risk tolerance allowed for this, and I knew I had enough savings and I had a little bit of side hustle income that could keep me going to bridge the gap between quitting and getting my business fully up and running. Phase 3, the ideation phase. So this is where you start to think about what you're going to be doing next. You start to look at your hobbies and your interests and any other ideas that you may have, and you start to consider all of these as potential side hustle material. And I'll quickly say here that if you're someone who's always known what you've wanted to do and you just haven't really had the courage or the nudge to make that happen, then this phase is not for you. For you, you just really need to get started on the idea that you've always had. But if you're like me and you're someone who knew you wanted to change, but you had no clue what you wanted to do next, then this phase is for you. So once I made the decision that I was leaving my career, I knew I wanted to start a side hustle and build up that business so that I would be ready to leave my 9-to-5. I first started looking at my hobbies because I wanted to leave my 9-to-5 ASAP and I wanted to get out of there quick. And so monetizing a hobby, I thought at the time, would be the quickest way to get out of my 9-to-5. And I really fell into the trap of really exploring quick win ideas and low-hanging fruit and really playing small because I wanted to leave my job quickly and I didn't really have a big idea of what I wanted to be doing next. And so my advice to you is to really consider and take the time in this stage to get to know yourself and really understand what's going to make you feel fulfilled moving forward, and not just looking for those quick win, best side hustles of 2023 kind of ideas. And if you want some help on this, check out my Ikigai video up here, where I cover a lot of the things that are going to help you set this solid foundation for what you should do moving forward. And one of my biggest tips from that video is to not just think about replacing your 9-to-5 income, but also consider your ideal lifestyle. One of the biggest reasons people start their own businesses is because they want to dictate their own lifestyle. So you need to consider what living on your own terms really looks like so that you can start to build your business in that way from day one. Otherwise, you may fall into the trap of replicating your 9-to-5 in your own business. So as you're coming up with your ideas, here's a few things that you could start with. Hobbies that you've already been developing for years. For me, this looked like photography. I had been shooting photos and learning about photography for like the past decade of my life when I started considering changing careers. You can also consider new hobbies. These may just take a little bit longer to get up to speed, but they shouldn't be discounted because you don't know how to do them already. The same goes for things that you've always had an interest in, but have never really taken the leap to pursue. For me, this looked like graphic design. It also looked like a physical Etsy shop, and it looked like a digital Etsy shop. These were all things that I explored before I discovered life coaching and decided that that was the path I wanted to go down. So some potential mistakes you can make in this phase are getting stuck in your head, getting stuck in the research and analysis paralysis phase, and not moving into action. Another mistake can be playing small with your ideas. For me, playing small looked like starting a Poshmark business and starting a little Etsy shop instead of pursuing what I knew in my gut that I should be doing, which was life coaching. If you're enjoying these tips so far, make sure to leave a like on the video and leave a comment down below. I would love to hear what is resonating and what is standing out for you. Phase 4, the identity change phase. So this phase really starts around the time that you decide you're leaving your 9-to-5 job. And it pretty much continues onwards from there. And it's really a person-by-person case as far as when you step fully into your new identity. But for a lot of us, if you've been working a 9-to-5 corporate job, your identity is going to be very tied to what you do for work. And you may feel a little uncomfortable or sheepish or just shy about sharing your new path in life and your new identity. But it's really important that you start to associate yourself as an entrepreneur or in whatever identity is the new path that you're contemplating. And so one of the first things that I was pursuing was photography, and that was because it was a hobby already and it was quick and easy to get going. And even though I had been doing photography as a hobby for years, starting to tell people that this is my potential new career path was a little bit intimidating. I felt imposter syndrome, and I felt that I was potentially going to be judged by people, and they would think, what is she doing going from this successful engineering degree into photography? And so the biggest tip here is to really just start telling people. And you don't need to start with your colleagues, obviously. You don't need to start with your friends and family either. It's actually easier to just start with strangers because they're going to accept you at face value. They don't know that you've been doing whatever you've been doing for the last 5 to 10 years of your life, and they're just gonna say, okay, cool, you're a photographer, that's great. And the more you start to see yourself as your new identity rather than your old identity, the easier it's going to be to take the steps needed to leave your career. Phase 5, taking action. So in the last phase, we talked about exploring new ideas, potentially exploring new hobbies and old hobbies, and whatever you think you may want to do moving forward. This phase is one of the most important phases because it's where you actually start taking action. So you want to quickly move from the previous phase, get your ideas going, but then take action on them quickly. Don't get stuck in the analysis paralysis, stuck in your head and constantly researching phase. I did that and it isn't great. It leads to more confusion it made me feel like I didn't have any ideas at all, when really I had a list of a dozen ideas, but I just wasn't taking action on any of them. This is the phase where you're really open and curious and you're not attached to any outcomes. This is just about getting to know what you like, what may work moving forward, and what doesn't work. And in this phase, you grow a lot as a person. You may start to learn how to run a business, and you're going to be learning a lot of skills that can be useful down the road. So for me, the taking action phase looked like starting a Poshmark business, like I mentioned before, starting a photography business, exploring briefly an Etsy physical goods business, and then quickly pivoting into an Etsy digital downloads shop. And I did all of this while avoiding the idea of life coaching and YouTube. And I did this because in my mind, all the other things that I was exploring, I could get started pretty quickly. But when it came to life coaching, that was something that was completely new to me, and I would have to do a lot of studying and training to get kind of up and running in that area. And for that reason, I avoided it. And so the takeaway there is, don't avoid things just because they may take a little bit longer or be a little bit more work, even if you're really unhappy in your job. And I understand how draining it is and how much it sucks to go to a job every day that you aren't loving. And I understand how badly you can want to get out of there really quick. But this is not going to help you ultimately find your purpose and your passion and long-term fulfillment if you're trying to get out of there too quickly. And so while you're taking action, make sure to not get too caught up in becoming an expert and learning everything that you can before you're going to put yourself out there, and actually take action and take the first steps to start your side hustle business. My best advice here is to just get started. You probably have some idea of the first couple steps that you could take. And then once you get stuck, that's when you take to the internet or go to YouTube or whatever you need to do to figure out how to overcome that next step. But don't get stuck in research, only seek out information when you get stuck along the way. I really made this mistake. I felt like I needed to learn everything and be perfect before I could put myself out there and offer anything to anyone for money. I really wanted people to get good value. But ironically, the way to give people value is to practice and get more experience, and then that way you master what you're doing, not by taking a million courses and going down a YouTube rabbit hole and never actually executing and practicing your skills. Phase 6 is the selection phase. Now that you've gotten a bunch of ideas and you've started taking action on them, you've probably been crossing a few things off your list, and you're starting to get a sense of what idea you want to move forward with. Or like in my case, you finally admit to yourself what you've known all along, that you should be probably pursuing that thing you've been avoiding, which for me was life coaching and starting a YouTube channel. So once you've decided what you want to move forward with, it's really just down to getting to work and taking it seriously. I think one of the things that held me back for a long time was actually calling my new business a side hustle. I think subconsciously it made me take it less seriously, and I always associated my 9-to-5 job as my main hustle, and I think it really just didn't help me move things along as quickly as I could have. So my recommendation is to just call it your business. You're building your own business, and it's okay to build a business while you're working your job, and you don't need to call it a side hustle. But of course, if you want to, you can. As long as you're able to take your side hustle as seriously as your main hustle, because you ultimately one day want that to be your main hustle. And from here, it's really just getting to work and building your business and aiming for whatever targets that you set in your risk and financial assessment phase. And so like I said earlier, once you start making money in your side hustle or business, you'll start to get a sense of how much faster you can quit your job. And so once you do get a sense of how much money you're making, you can update your timeline to include this new additional income that you're making. And a quick note on timelines, as you get close to when you're able to quit, your gremlin in your mind that tries to keep you from making changes or leaving your comfort zone may start to speak up. My gremlin was talking about 4 months out from when I could see that I would be able to quit my job, and I started to get nervous about quitting. I started to get nervous about money and the kind of voice in your head that says, are you really going to be ready in time? Maybe you should stay just a little bit longer, and you'll start to have thoughts like that are going to keep you from making this big change in your life. So my advice here is to really stick to your timeline. You already did your risk and financial assessment, and if you've been doing a good job with your numbers, you'll know when you can quit. And you just have to push through those fears that come up around quitting and just stick to your plan. So my advice here is definitely shorten your timeline if you can, but avoid pushing your timeline back just out of fear of change. And of course, if something big comes up in your life that's going to throw a wrench into this, be realistic and you can push your timeline back. But otherwise, don't just push it back because you're nervous or scared of change. Phase 7, it's time to quit. This is an amazing feeling and a big step. You've just worked so hard to get to a place where you're ready to quit. You've saved up your runway, you've built up your business, you've done all the things, and this is a time to celebrate. And I know you're probably gonna have a little bit of nervous jitters, but just remember how far you've come and be proud of yourself for really making this change happen in your life. I'm not going to go into details on how to quit your job, but there's a lot of videos on YouTube that can teach you the things if you're not exactly sure what to do. I personally gave my company 1 month notice. And if you want to give your company 2 weeks, that's fine. You do whatever you feel is right for you. All right, everyone, that's the video. And those are the 7 phases that I went through to be able to quit my 9-to-5 job. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. And I would love to hear back from you in the comments as well. I would love to hear what resonated with you. If you enjoyed this video and you would like more weekly content like this, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.